But Yerf, how'd you find the stream? Welcome in. Good to have you here. So yeah, so far what we have is we're toasting up our bread for breadcrumbs. We have flour, we have our egg mixture. This is our cornmeal with some seasonings. And then we're gonna go ahead and dip our mac and cheese balls in it. Yes, thank you so much for the Instagram link, Colin. I appreciate you guys. A Dash of Joy is Joyful Eats TV on Instagram. She does food videos and she's so much fun. She's incredible. Go drop her a follow. You're missing out on doing life wrong if you're not. Rosie, we are making fried mac and cheese tonight. We made the mac and cheese yesterday, just shaped them up into these balls, had them in the freezer for a little bit. They're gonna go in the flour, then in here, and then into the fryer. Freaking incredible. Normal or sweet pickles? I like normal. Normal or spicy pickles. Not a fan of like bread and butter pickles. What about you? Don't worry, we're trying to pronounce my name. It was just a random name that I typed. I was saying, it kind of looks like you just kind of like rolled across the keyboard and called it a name. But hey, I like it. I like it. It starts a conversation. Zoom in. This is my happy place. Yes, Rosie's all about a good zoom in. She loves it. We do the zoom in on Instagram just for her. You're gonna work? All right, no worries, Hottest Bay. I will have to try to pop into your stream tomorrow if you get a chance before you leave. Tell us what time you're streaming. Super sour pickles. I'm all about super sour anything. There is a girl who I follow on Instagram that's an influencer that lives in Texas, and they have, supposedly they make pickle beer, which I have not found here in Florida, but I would love to try that. I'm all about anything sour. Sour beers are my favorite. Sour candies, all that kind of stuff. Not just pickles, sour anything. You like dill ones? Yeah, I don't like bread and butter pickles that much. That was it. That's what you did? I like it. What part of the world are you joining us from? That's what I'm going to call you for now. Is Yerf. Cheers, you guys. I already have flour all over myself somehow. How does this always happen? Keep an eye on those and flip them over so both sides get toasted. Pickle soda? I have heard of the pickle soda. Yeah, pickle beer sounds like it would be right up my alley. Oh my gosh, it's all over my sleeve. Why am I chaos? Why am I like this? like what even? It's just everywhere. Yes, if you find the pickle beer, tell me how it is. Give me a review. Definitely. They have the pickle soda on Amazon. Interesting, okay. Have to look for that. Okay, let's go ahead and mix. Show us your tattoo. Which one? This one? Sure. It's upside down. It's an Irish flag. It has my grandpa's initials on it. No, I know I can wash my hoodie. I'm not worried about it being stained. I'm more just like, how are we this little into the making of this and I already have that much food on me. That's really all. Yeah, it's Irish flag with my grandpa's initials. He was my mom's dad. He passed away when I was 12. He was one of the last few really good gentlemen left in the world, I feel like. He was super old-fashioned. He was the best. Pickled beer sounds awful. That's okay. You don't have to like it. Well, if you hate pickles. Well, yeah, if you don't like pickles, you're not going to like pickled beer. That 19 sells pickle soda. Okay. Have you ever tried ketchup chips? I have not. You can get pickle soda there. Never looked for it. Nice story. Yeah, he was a pilot in World War II. He was a reconnaissance pilot. I actually have, let me check on these before they burn. About to get distracted. Flip these pieces of bread over, toast the other side for our breadcrumbs. Let me grab this and I'll show you real quick. So I have several of these in my office at work and then some pilot in World War II. And these were some of his pictures that his plane took. Let me move these real quick. Yeah, both of my grandpas were actually World War II vets. Both of them. So my grandpa flew a P-38 reconnaissance plane. It's actually really, really neat. One day I might do a just chatting stream and get all his old pictures out, especially the ones I haven't sealed. So I took some of his pictures that his plane took and I put them on canvases and sealed it over the top with Mod Podge so that they would stop, because you can see how it's disintegrating up here at the top a little bit. And then like this one is one of the planes that he flew, and you can see that like this picture is disintegrating at the top too. But I just put them on these little canvases and glued them down and put Mod Podge over the top. So super, super cool. And I have a bunch of these in my office. I have a bunch in my living room. And then I have a whole binder full of a ton of his other pictures. It's really, really neat. Bagged milk came friends because we love poutine. Oh, let's go. Are you Canadian? Oh, dang. You have a friend who's Canadian? Yeah, Aspie's from Canada. Men were brave back in the day. They were. They were. Love the meaning behind your tattoo. Thank you for sharing. You're so welcome. I have 7 tattoos. They all have meaning behind them. Every single one. Yes, Japan. Traveling Ham! Hi! How are you? Good to see you. Love your face, guys. Traveling Ham's a legend. He's one of our VIPs. He streams from his big rig truck driving across the country. I have a package from you that I need to open. Alright. We have our bread toasted for our breadcrumbs. But since Ham is here, let's open. It is a cool keepsake, right? Hi, Shayna. How are you? Isn't it neat? Super cool way to have them stored. So I have tons of these, which I love. Like I said, my grandpa was my hero, so really, really cool. Thank you for the shout out to Traveling Ham. There are ways to transfer photos to wood. You are right. We actually did a test of that before we streamed for Starlight around Christmas time to make Christmas ornaments. There are ways to do that with Mod Podge. Yeah, you can like flip the picture over and do it and then like peel the back off. In the TJIF Eve High Rough Week at Work, same, Shayna. Same. Very much same. Sassy Pants in the house. What are you doing? How are you? Good to see you. You got a gifted sub earlier, my friend. You got a sub earlier. You're in Montana. Let's go. How's Montana? All right, guys. We got mail to open. We just got a letter. I wonder who it's from. Just kidding. It's from Traveling Ham. Let's open it. I already peeled my address off the sticker. It's a zucchini spiralizer. Let's go. So cool. Thank you so much for this, Traveling Ham. When we come back from vacation, I can't wait to try to make zoodles and other things. You are a freaking legend. I appreciate you so, so much. You guys haven't dropped a follow to Traveling Ham. He's been so generous, so supportive of this stream. He does too much, but I'm super excited for it. So, we got 5 blade spiralizer with 5 interchangeable blades, storage caddy for 2 of them, and downloadable recipes. You can make potato twists, apple chips, vegetable pasta, coleslaw, all the things. Look at all the things it does. So many things. Yes, Sash, you're gonna be in Florida in a couple weeks. Let's go. Let's go. Thank you, Ham. You're awesome. I appreciate you. You did not have to do this. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. It's 107 degrees there. Oh my gosh. Darky! Hi, Darky. Guys, if you're not following, Dark Auditor 11, aka Darky! We love Darky. Hey, Go Dogs 01, thank you for the follow. Appreciate you. How'd you find the stream? Darky, you are a freaking legend. How are you? Good to see you. Good to see you. Darky does food and drink and game streams. He's so much fun. Go show him some love. Little Miss Nikki! So many amazing people are popping into stream tonight. Thank you all for being here. Little Miss Nikki is one of the first people I ever met on Twitch. She is so wholesome. She does food and drink. She's awesome. She streams during the day a lot of the time. Love her freaking face. If you need lunchtime entertainment, go follow Little Miss Nikki. Wait, Shayna, I missed your message. Let me scroll back up. You have one with 3 blades? Oh, let's go. Do you like yours, Bakery Worker? I have the same one in a box. After I saw Rusty use it, you go first. Shayna, let's do it together. Let's do it together. You always say you're going to cook along with Planet Night, and we'll do it together. We could even do it in Discord if you don't want to do like on stream and have it like more casual one night. When are you going to buy the Xbox Series X fridge? There's an Xbox Series X fridge. I don't know. I live in an apartment, so I don't have room to put another fridge anywhere. Have them. They're awesome. Oh, that's good. I'm so glad. I can't wait to try it out. Let's do the stream with just using that sometime. Oh, absolutely. We're gonna do a stream using just this. We're gonna do a stream doing our dinosaur cookies. We're gonna do another stream with the waffle maker. We have lots of streams to do with the generosity of the presents that people have been purchasing for us. So we gotta do a spiralizer stream. We gotta do a dinosaur cookie stream. We gotta do a waffle stream. We gotta do another tart. We gotta do cleaning the kitchen. We're gonna do a deep clean. Mike bought me a new set of rags and he joked like, I don't see a stream dedicated to the rags. And I was like, oh, watch me. No, you're the legend, Darky. What are you up to tonight? How is everything? You're so close to done with school, right? Are you done yet? Are you done yet? Thank you, Colin, for all these shout outs. I appreciate you guys. Everybody that Kalino is shouting out, please go click on their links and go show some love. What about you, Sassy Pants? What are you up to tonight? Talking about you and your man today on stream. Hope you guys are doing well. Thank you, Nikki. I appreciate you. I hope you're doing well. Congrats again to your hubby on hitting 1K. Got a chance to raid into his stream the other night, but had to go to bed pretty quickly afterwards and didn't get to chat for super long because my man got home late and did not get to talk to him for very much time, but was like, oh no, you're home, we raided. Ugh, the worst, but we love him. Nikki and her hubby both stream, and they're incredible. Mini fridge that looks like a large Xbox. Wait, really? We need a new mini fridge, but we want a stainless steel one. Pizza pockets? Wait, what? What about pizza pockets? A cook-along. Yeah, we could do a cook-along. I mean, really, any night is a cook-along. You know what I mean? Any night's a cook-along because of the recipes in the Discord. That's okay, Nikki. It's okay. It's no worries. Listen, like I said, I wish I could have stayed longer. A pizza pocket? You mean like pizza rolls? Like Totino's pizza rolls? Is that what you're talking about? Mr. Sprinkles! Mr. Design! Welcome in. So many good people hanging out here tonight. Thank you guys for being here. Mr. Design, what's going on at your house? Traveling Ham! Thank you so much for the resub. 3 months! Appreciate you, my friend! Mr. Sprinkles, thank you for the lurk. Saw your barbecue plate that you posted on Instagram. Looked legendary. Do a deep clean at our house? You got it. Yes, we have so many to-dos. We have so many to-dos. So much content to do when we come back from vacation. We have our stream tomorrow for Funky's birthday, and we have our jukebox trivia and our budget series on Saturday, and then we're taking an entire week off Twitch and other content. And so yeah, it's gonna be a good chance to reset, and then we're coming back at it hard with lots of content. Do you want to come over and clean at your house? Sure. Finished school as of this week. Let's go! Cheers to you, my friend. Cheers to you finishing school. Drama, I appreciate you. How are you doing? Good to have you here. What's up at your house tonight? Yeah, tomorrow is Funky's birthday stream. His birthday's actually on Tuesday. Oh wait, this is the mini fridge. Thank you, Colin. Let me look at this. Oh, he done. It's celebration time, right? Like, Darky, are you celebrating tonight? Like, are we doing a shot? Oh, whoa, that's weird. It's only $100. How big is it? It's not in stock though. Oh, if you buy it online, you can't get it in the store. Hot Pockets, we were talking. Oh, Hot Pockets. Okay, got you. Hot Pockets. We could do Hot Pockets. I thought when you said pizza pockets, I thought you were maybe talking about like pizza rolls as opposed to Hot Pockets. Strawberry cream cheese and Reese's cup covered bagels. Wait, on the same bagel? or different bagels? Either sound good. Cutest fridge the other day, it was bear-shaped. Oh my god, you need it! Fridge is $99.99. It's not bad. Darth Burbaka! Guys, we have the other Kyle in the house. Darth Burbaka's here. He's a food and drink streamer. His name is also Kyle. We love his face. You can go into his stream and yell, Kyle! Let's go. Yeah, Hot Pockets. We can do that. So excited for you to have a break. I'm so excited for me to have a break. I will miss you guys, but it will be a good break. It will be a good break. Spend time with my mom. Sleep in, sit in the sun, read, social media cleanse, beer with my dad. I'd do a shot if you're doing one. Colin, are you doing a shot with us? I love how I just am deciding to rope Colin into this when he doesn't act. You can totally refuse. But yeah, Darky, I'll do a shot. What do you got? I got light rum, spice rum, whiskey, bourbon, tequila. Really looks like your own fridge is smaller. Am I okay? The own fridge? The mini fridge looks small in the picture. Pizza rolls would be so vigorous, they would be. Looks like I'm not making it to Mass for the meetup. Current load is taking me to Missouri, doesn't deliver till the 23rd. Oh, dang. We're not gonna be able to make it either if that makes you feel any better. But, Nagin and Jeff should be back in Florida around January time. So if you're able to get to Florida around that time, we usually do a meetup down here around Disney. Drinking regardless this weekend. Gotta get excited. Finally done, and it feels so good. Let's go. I'm so excited for you. Colin has a headache. Okay, no worries. No worries. Darky, what do you got to take a shot of? Chocolate chip bagels with Reese's Cups and strawberry cream cheese? How'd you come up with that? Don't mind me just being chaotic. You're fine. You're fine. Saw it at Target Tuesday. It's a tabletop type about 18 inches tall. Okay, fair enough. Just grab Liquid IV. Sounds like you need that. Definitely drink that. I tried I got a sample of Liquid IV from Walmart grocery pickup the other day, and I had the lemon lime flavor. It actually was pretty good. All the Kyles and Misters. Yes, yes. What am I missing here? I got bourbon. You want to do that? Yeah, let's do bourbon. Let's do it. I'm going to chill it so it's going to be a little bit more enjoyable to shoot. Traveling Ham, thank you for the host. I appreciate you. What kind of bourbon are you drinking, Darky? Cheers to you finishing school. Let me know when you're ready. I'm good to go. All right, cheers. What do you say? Cheers, big ears. That's what you always say. Whew. Still here lurking. I appreciate you, Mrs. Ellis. You're a legend for that. Thank you. I'll do a mango lassie shot. Do it. Are you American? I am American. Are you American? Love you. Your goals are so cool. I want, what goals? Those ones? Those ones? That one? That thing? Excuse me? A 9+1 coming in with 1,001 biddies. Thank you so much for the bits. Let's go. Let's go. Yes, they're gonna be fun. Homemade granola bars, so fun. Thank you for the biddies, I appreciate you. Okay, let me grab the blender so we can make our breadcrumbs. Anon, who the heck are you? Who the heck are you? Update, Funky was talking about Nashville hot chicken in his text message. I was like, what are you talking about? We're not having barbecue tomorrow night. I have a different theory every stream about a non+1. Same. I think there's multiple non+1s at this point. I don't think they're all the same person. There used to be one. Now I think there's multiple. Jeffrey, blah, 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 blah. How are you? Shout out to Ice Cream Posse if you guys are not following. Ice Cream Posse, aka Jeffrey, blah, blah, blah. I'm doing life wrong. Jeffrey streams from his ice cream shop in Groveland, Massachusetts, Tuesday through Sunday, making orders for customers. He has a super cool point of view camera that he wears. It's a GoPro that's strapped to his chest so you can see from his point of view as he makes the orders. He's a legend. We're blessed to know Jeff. He is family. Know him on and off stream. He also does streams from his arcade at home. He does IRL. He does games. He does DJ streams. Jeffrey, how you doing? I didn't get a chance to pop in to the stream today. How was stream? How was business at the shop today? Work has been super crazy because I'm going to be out Monday afternoon and then all of next week. So I haven't been able to pop in and say hey in streams very often because been busy trying to get all my clients set up so my coworkers are not slammed with all of my work. Yes, fried mac and cheese. I made the mac and cheese last night off stream and we let it chill and we just shaped them into balls and they're sitting in the freezer. We just toasted up some bread. We're gonna make some homemade breadcrumbs. Let's go. Thank you for that shout out to Ice Cream Posse. Jeff is the owner of the stream team that we are a part of, the Posse, !point team in the chat. Make sure you follow all the freaking legends. There's a lot of incredible people on that team. Esley, what's going on? Good to see ya. You knew it. What do you mean you knew it? You knew what? You knew what? You think it's Royal NMD? It's very possible. Could be anybody, really. I have other theories, too. Jeffrey, I bet you're super excited to have Nagin back on the East Coast. What's my favorite dessert? Depends on my mood. I love a strawberry milkshake. I love a warm cookie. Creme brulee is good. Tiramisu is good. What's your favorite dessert? Oh yeah, food processor / blender is out for that purpose. Breadcrumbs to go with the cornmeal to dip the mac and cheese in. Can take a break from Domino's, right? You're probably like becoming best friends with the Domino's driver. Let's go. I was watching her stream before I started and Sunday kept barking. I was like, man, Sunday's probably just so excited to have her back too. Sunday loves Nagin. Okay. Yeah, everybody else share your favorite desserts in chat. If you ever get up to Groveland, Massachusetts, make sure you stop into Jeff and Maria's Ice Cream and Food to get a peanut butter wizard. Friggin' legendary sundae. Also, I don't know though. You know, Jeff, when I was there in your stream last week, the sundae that had, I can't remember what the name of it was. I had never seen it made before. It was like banana split, but it had peanut butter, ice cream, I think, and chocolate. That one, I feel like that might actually even be more up my alley than the peanut butter wizard, and I felt super conflicted. Ooh, a cherry almond milkshake. Let's go. Cherry vanilla is another good one too. Ooh, Moose Tracks ice cream. That was a classic when I was a kid. Man. My favorite one's cheesecake. Love the ones from Cheesecake Factory. What's your favorite from Cheesecake Factory? Funky actually used to work there. Peanut butter bash. Yes, that one. That one. Yeah. I had never seen that one made before in all the time I've been watching your stream, and I could not believe it. I was like, why have I never seen this made before? That looked freaking incredible. Absolutely incredible. What up, Squigs? Can I have ice cream today? I don't want to wait till Sunday. Do it. Why not? Just do it. Peanut butter brownie bash, too. Oh, cool. Wait. Did somebody order that one that night or no? Somebody did the brownie sundae with like Moose Tracks ice cream or peanut butter Oreo ice cream. That peanut butter Oreo ice cream for the peanut butter bash banana split. Dude, oh my god. Oreo and Hershey's. Ooh, yum. I used to like the red velvet cheesecake at the Cheesecake Factory, which is actually one of the most fattening ones on the menu. Ben and Jerry's half baked, oh, that's a good one. I like There used to be one that was a Ben & Jerry's that was Dave Matthews Band that had brownies and raspberry in it that was really good. Yeah, that peanut butter Oreo, I was there when you were scooping like the end of the of the container, and I was like, dude, oh my gosh. Yes, it's definitely worth it. Definitely worth it. All right, real quick, guys, I'm gonna mute my mic while I blend these into breadcrumbs so I don't kill everybody's eardrums. Exclamation point ears in chat. Okay. Okay, so we have some bigger pieces. I'm gonna put these back onto the sheet pan. Toast under the broiler a little bit longer, and then we're gonna blend again. Everything is updated. Let's go. You have to enjoy life. I'm with you. You're enjoying life. And you know what? One of my mottos in life is: dessert is not where we're meant to cut corners. I don't do healthy desserts most of the time. I'd rather have a healthy, balanced dinner and go all out on dessert. I didn't do anything. It was muted. Have chicken and pickle juice right now. They get made into chicken strips in the end. Yes, that's how Chick-fil-A does it. Gotta love it. Gotta love it. Let's check on these mac and cheese balls. Oh yeah, those are much more frozen now. That's perfect. There's our mac and cheese balls. We have a lot of balls. Oh, homemade is definitely better than theirs. Anything homemade is better. Listen, once you start cooking homemade, you can't go back to like fast food and things like that. It's so hard to go back. Want to know one of Kyle's mottos? Oops, I spilled. Yep. I spill a lot. Colin, I've even gotten to the point where I say, oops, I spilled when I'm not streaming, like in my head to myself, and it's like, thanks. Dessert problem for me is a lactose intolerance. Yeah, that can probably be really difficult. There's not a lot of desserts that don't have lactose. You could probably do cookies, you know, that's an easier swap than some of the other stuff. All right, I'm actually gonna run to the restroom, guys. I will be right back.
Mac and cheese?
Okay, it's fixed. It's fixed. It's fixed. It's fixed. Yes. So I was saying, started randomly thinking common streamer phrases. Yes, definitely. And it sucks because when you want to say it and they're not from your streamer life and they don't know it. And then key to do regular exercise, eat with moderation. Absolutely. I feel you. I feel you. Yes, I'm unmuted now. I am. I'm telling you. I'm reading back through. And then Colin says, I say, ayo, more than I like to admit. And I said, been there. Been there. Is it only the one way? Wait, what? Always pick up sayings and verbiage from people. Yes. Easy to do that. Easy to do that. Okay. So we just toasted these again. Welcome on to my hat. I read that in her voice. Oh my gosh, yeah. Whenever I hear one of us, I see Mrs. Ruby. One of us, one of us. Yes. DJ Skids! Happy birthday! Shout out to DJ Skids if you guys aren't following Skids. Game streamer, legend. It's her birthday. Say happy birthday. I'm gonna mute my mic real quick and blend. Alright, we done. Thank you, Colin. Alright, y'all. Add our homemade breadcrumbs in here. Mix them with our cornmeal and our seasonings. Losing weight thanks to doing exercise, eating with moderation. Saturday, Sunday, I eat whatever I want. Yeah, it's a good like 80-20 motto, you know what I mean? Like follow like 80% of the time you know, eat pretty balanced and pretty healthy, and 20% of the time you just do whatever. I'm with you on that. Alley Cat! Thank you for wishing Skid a happy birthday. How you doing, Allie? Alright. So we have that stuff ready to go. I'm gonna plug the deep fryer in. Be right back over there with y'all. DJ Skids. DJ Skids. There was birthing? Yes, it's DJ Skids' birthday. Alright, so now what we're gonna do. We're gonna test one of these out and see how it goes. We're gonna have to do them in batches for sure. You have been birthed. Okay. Let's get a big bowl. Put them in. Let's grab paper towels, line it. Thank you for the follow. Yerf, appreciate you. Make sure to join the Discord, get to know everybody in the community. We'll stick this over here to the right of the fryer. And then, let's test one of these, y'all. See how it goes. All right. Flour. Egg mixture. Into the breadcrumbs and the cornmeal. Coats it pretty well. And then we're gonna let that sit. And we gotta repeat on all the balls. I'm gonna get a chair because we got lots of balls to do. Heard that when I said it. Should not have phrased it that way. Streamer fail. Yikes. That's what she said. Yep. Anyway. Exactly. Alright, hold on. Okay. That is most definitely a piece of my hair. Oops. Not get your hair in the balls, yeah. Don't do that. Anybody ever made fried mac and cheese before? Sounds right. Thank you for the blurb. Never made it. Yes, fried mac and cheese. Hi, Lindley. How are ya? Maybe I will in my air fryer. Not allowed to deep fry in my house. Have no way of disposing oil. Fair enough. Fair enough. You can always just put the used oil back into the container that it came in. How are you, Lindley? Fried ravioli once at work, but not fried mac and cheese. Yes, fried ravioli is another good one. We could do that as one of the goals one week. That'd be a long stream though, because we would have to. I would want to make the pasta from scratch, and we could use the pasta attachment on the KitchenAid. So that could be like a Friday or Saturday stream. So we would do this whole process after making homemade pasta and then homemade ravioli. We could make fried ravioli. We could totally do that. We could do that as one of our goals. I've made ravioli once. We've made homemade pasta 3 times, but I've made homemade ravioli once. Like I said, it'd be a longer stream, so you guys would have to be in for the long haul, but. Fried ravioli would be pretty awesome. I did, Lindley. I made it last night. The Instant Pot mac and cheese recipe from my website is what I used, ! Socials. Basically, you take a box of noodles and you cook them with 4 cups of water, a little bit of salt, pepper, and a couple pats of butter in the in the pressure cooker for like 4 minutes, and then release the pressure and add in half and half in cheese and any seasonings you want. You could also just make mac and cheese whatever way you normally make it, and then you just have to let it chill in the fridge for like 3 to 4 hours minimum. I let it sit overnight in a casserole dish, and then we shaped them into balls of noodles tonight, and then put them in the freezer for like 20-30 minutes. Just so they would be a little bit more solid and easy to work with. I was gonna make it on stream last night, but I ended up canceling stream. I had a lot of behind the scenes stuff to get working on. Yeah, you don't want sticky balls. Nobody wants sticky balls. I mean, at this point, I feel like it's kind of just that it kind of has to be with everybody making the ball jokes. I don't think we have a family-friendly tag in here tonight anyways, so it's all good. It happens. Our blurps are allowed to be PG-13, so I don't allow y'all to rated R blurps. Just because that could get out of hand real quick. In here 10 months I can do a long stream. Fair enough. This is about 1.5 to 2 cups of flour in this first one, 4 eggs and a splash of water in the second one. Little ears are probably asleep. It's 10 o'clock on the East Coast. And then we got our about 1.5 cups of cornmeal, 1.5 cups of breadcrumbs, and some seasonings. Ever caught some stream that could be rated R? I have, but I have definitely come across streams like that. And there's nothing wrong with them, it's just, you know, that's their content. Trying to figure out the rating of me and my friends. I think it depends on which swear words you use. Things like that. Yeah, chat is usually pretty tidy in here, for sure. Handballs? What's a handball? Never made a handball before. Oh, got the babysitting gig. Oh, that's awesome. Seeing how a month goes. Well, GG's. GG's. Let us know how it works out. I was a nanny all through college. Didn't care about the words, it was the innuendo. Oh, no, absolutely. Yeah. It can happen, for sure. How old are the kiddos that you're gonna be nannying? 2 first graders. Oh, nice. Are they twins? Oh, twin first graders. I read that as 2 first graders. Read more carefully, Kyle. Yes, all the mac and cheese. Really cute. Played with them tonight to make sure we vibe. All played with Clay. Nice. See, they say 2-year-olds are the terrible age. Honestly, 3 and 4 are really tough ages too. Learning emotional regulation as a toddler is not easy. A lot of kiddos struggle. Two is when they start to like know enough words to be able to speak their feelings a little bit better. But yes, learning emotional regulation as an adult is also hard. Very true. Yes, I'm excited for the final result 2-page. These are getting a little stickier as I'm leaving them out. I think I probably need to put the ones, I'm gonna finish one more row of 5. So I have 2 already. This is my 3rd one. I'm gonna put them back in the freezer for a few. And fry this first batch. Sure hope these don't suck. We'll wait now, right? Mom says they might be sneaky, but I think I can handle them. Dang. I had a sneaky kiddo once. She was 4.5 and her sister was about 6 months old. And I think it wasn't that she was a sneaky kiddo, it was that she was having a very hard time adjusting to having a sibling. But Little Mary is showing us the 2 sign her birthday in November. She has strong opinions. Oh boy. I love the series on Mrs. Ruby's Twitter of Mary finds glasses, Mary wears glasses. Definitely one of my favorite things to see. I've been watching Mrs. Ruby since she was pregnant with Mary. Okay, so that's 15. I'm gonna... 4-year-olds apparently have more energy than any other age. I could believe that for sure. I could believe that for sure. Okay. These are going back in the freezer. And the egg is going back in the fridge. While we get these done, waiting on the deep fryer to finish heating up. One twin is significantly less shy than the other one. She heartily approved of me, and her sister was like, you're alright. I was like, I'll take it. Dang. As long as you tolerate me, we're good. That's true. It works. Solid strategy. Solid strategy. Alright. So we got those waiting on the fryer. I do need to make a salad too. Right, if you don't freak out and call me a stranger when I try to pick you up from school, it's fine. I remember, so when I was a nanny for the 2 boys when I was in college, when I started, they were 7 and 9. And I remember, so their school was a private Catholic school, and it had several like pickup policies, right? So like they each had like a code. So it was like the letter, or it was like the number of the grade they were in, and then the first letter of their teacher's last name. So like if they were in 3rd grade and had Mrs. Smith, it would be 3S, and then you had to say the kid's name, right? Cerise Jubilee! We can't stay calm because Cerise is raiding! Let's go, guys! Cerise, how was your stream? Thank you so much for the raid. Tell us all about what you did today. Welcome in to the neighbors from the dinner party. So excited to have you here. Welcome, welcome. How's everybody's night going? Good to have you guys. If you guys are new here, welcome in for the first time. My name is Kyle. A Date Night In is all about dinners, drinks, desserts, and date nights at home. We're making fried mac and cheese tonight. Hi, One Little Llama. Hi, Rose. Good to have you here. Welcome, welcome. Mike's here. Hi, Mike. How was your race? Let's go. Shout out to Cerise. She's incredible, guys. She does food and drink. She does makers and crafting. She makes her own aprons. She's awesome. She's so much fun to watch. Go show her some love. State Fair, day 1, deep frying. Oh, we're deep frying. Perfect. What did you deep fry today? Tell me. Horrible, but I enjoyed myself. That's what counts. That's what counts. Love it, love it. You'll get back into the swing of it. How's the new setup treating you? Mike is one of our mods. He does iRacing, and he just had a race tonight. Thank you so much for the raid. Welcome in, you guys. Good to have you here. We are getting our fried mac and cheese ready for the fryer. We have half the batch done, and the other half I put the mac and cheese balls back in the freezer for a little bit. So we made the mac and cheese last night, and it's a white cheddar mac. And then we made some homemade breadcrumbs, and we took the mac and cheese, formed them into balls, froze them for a little bit, dipped them in flour, and then an egg mixture and some cornmeal, homemade breadcrumbs, and some salt, pepper, garlic powder, onion powder, paprika, and cayenne. Mike has forbidden me from shouting him out, so I'll respect that. Fair enough. He doesn't forbid me from shouting him out. Funnel cake and Oreos. Also did a steak sandwich, not fried. Ooh, love steak sandwich. That is one of my favorite things, like a hoagie. Oh, so good. Funnel cake and Oreos. Oh my gosh, deep fried Oreos. Oh, haven't had those in forever. Those are so good. Those are a delicacy that you have to have at least once in your life. Hold on. Shout out to Rusty Go Mike, because he won't yell at me for doing it. Or if he does, who cares? Because You can't. You can't yell at me. Okay, yeah, so NMD. So I tried to pick the kids up from school that time, right? So I pulled up, and their school had two. I was sharing a story about nannying for those of you who just came in. So the kiddos I used to nanny were 7 and 9 when I started. Their school had a really intricate pickup system, and they had several waves of pickup. So if you got there by like 2:45, you could be in the first wave. But if you got there at 2:46, you were in wave 2. Waves 1 and 2 were both for standard release, right? And then wave 3 would be for like kids who had to stay after to like make up a test or had like, I don't know, whatever, you know, what insert school activity there. Well, there was one time that I was the last car in line for first pickup and they didn't take me. So I had to wait for second wave. And Carter went to the front office and called his mom, panicking that I wasn't there. And like, I was just so happened to the first time be the last car, but then his mom was in a meeting, so she texted her husband. Their mom worked for Coca-Cola and the dad was a surgeon. And so then their dad, who I had never really communicated with and actually never even met in person yet, is calling me like, excuse me, where are you? I'm like, hi Bob, like I'm at the school. I just so happened to be the last car. They didn't let me in for first wave. Like, I'm here. And he's like, oh, okay, well, Carter's freaking out. And I'm like, you just got me in so much trouble. We had to come up with a policy like, hey, maybe don't panic until it's like second wave and I'm not here. Maybe I did okay for the rookies. First and second were rookies. Oh, nice. Let's go. Listen, Mike, you're going to get back into it. You're going to get back into it. You know, it's been a while since you've done racing consistently, right? You'll get there. You'll get there. I did what I could, Mike. Yeah. Did you? Did you? Oh yeah, I was already freaking out about being late, and then I got in trouble. I was like, I'm gonna lose this job. I'm gonna lose this job. And Carter was, he was a sweetheart, but he was a ball of anxiety for sure. Struggle to get rookie of the year when they got first and second, and I got 15th. They could have had, you know, beginner's luck. You never know. You never know. And it's only, and the courses change each week though, right? So who knows? Maybe that's just like their best course. Make sure I'm on the pickup list because for sure not release kids when they're confused or skeptical about their pickup. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Some like public schools have such like, I mean, in my public school, you just walked outside, you know? Teachers would stand there in case like kids weren't picked up, but like other than that, you just walked outside to whoever, you know? But the private school that these kiddos went to had a very like strict system. And then when I cut my hair into a pixie cut, I had to like text their mom the day before to be like, hey, just so you know, I cut my hair off. Here's a selfie. Please tell the kids like I'm gonna look different. So they're not like terrified, and all the people at the school thought I was a stranger because I went from like hair this length to a pixie cut basically. Okay, track. Fair enough. You know what I meant. You know what I meant. Racing, not golf. Which track did you do tonight, though? Waiting on this fryer to heat up. Dover. That's Alabama, right? Wait, no. Delaware? Delaware? Delaware. Had a kid's aunt come and the kiddo wasn't making eye contact, so I was like, I'm sorry, I gotta call home just to check. Oh, absolutely. Gotta be safe, as opposed to sorry. Daytona, let's go. Hi, Classy Kyle, how you doing? Good to see you. Welcome in. Delaware. I was like, yeah, I said Alabama, and then I was like, no. That's not a thing. I was thinking of Dothan. Dothan, not Dover. How you doing, Kyle? Good to see you. We have all the Kyles in the house tonight. We had Darth Rabaka, and now we have Classy Kyle, and I'm Kyle. All the Kyles. We just need Little Rock. Where's Little Rock? He's Kyle. We're making fried mac and cheese. We're just waiting on the deep fryer to finish heating up. Make sure you guys don't miss tomorrow's stream, Funky's birthday. We're doing several giveaways. We're making Nashville hot chicken pizza with homemade popcorn chicken. I made homemade pickles last night. And then we're making a graveyard dessert because he's turning 30, so we're doing a funeral theme. I'm gonna take down the gnomes for one day to do a little spooky theme for his put the fun in funeral little concept that we're doing. And then I'm gonna share 30 of my favorite memories. I'm not giving him his present on stream. I'm giving him his present on his actual birthday. But yes, Little Rock, exactly. Didn't really get to eat dinner since this thing was harder to put together than building a car from scratch. Oh no. What did you have? All right, I'm gonna pop these into the fryer for a couple of minutes. Let's see how they do. Perfect that we're making these because I wanted to make stuff that also had cornmeal on it in the next time I fry so I could get another use out of the oil before I dump it and switch it for something else. So this actually works out really well that we're doing these tonight. So I'm glad that we met this goal last week so we can make these happen. And then we're gonna change the oil out or use oil something different tomorrow. Put the funky in funeral, yeah. 2 bites of pasta and 1 piece of sausage. Would you have other food you can go heat up? Go get some real food into your system. Or some more food into your system, I should say. These smell good. Cornmeal in the fryer. Remind me next time we do cornmeal, which we already did it with the tomatoes, which is why I'm glad we're doing it this way. Goes everywhere and is really hard to strain out. Really, really hard to strain out. So tomorrow night when we make the Nashville hot chicken, I bought oil and we're gonna do it in the enamel coated cast iron skillet on the stove, I think, or we'll just clean the deep fryer at the beginning of stream. Could heat up the pasta. I didn't eat in the other half of the sausage. Too late for me to eat. Oh, fair enough. Mike, hide the tomatoes. The whole time I was meeting the kids, the mom was trying to get them to show me a restaurant menu they were making and they wouldn't. She just texted me and it's precious. Oh, so cute. Cornmeal messes in the fryer. Oh yeah, it's a disaster for sure. So that's why I'm glad that we decided to do it with the cornmeal and the breadcrumbs, just like the tomatoes from last time, so that now we can get one more use out of that oil, and then we'll get rid of it, and then we can, like I said, either wash the fryer or fry in the enamel coated cast iron tomorrow. We did the Nashville hot chicken on the stovetop in the cast iron the first time because I didn't have enough oil and my deep fryer needed to be cleaned a couple weeks ago when we did that too. I didn't have enough oil to refill it. How crispy are these? Oh yeah. That's what we want. Heck yeah. Alright, let me get these last couple into here. I have 4 more that didn't fit. I think I fried for like 3 minutes. Yikes. Got my finger a little bit. Fried mac and cheese. Includes pie, salad, tomatoes. Love it. Fried green tomato caprese. Ooh, that'd be good. All right, let me get one of these onto a plate. Audrey, you want my balls? Hi, Audrey. If you guys are not following the legend, Audrey Enjoy. She's an incredible food and drink streamer. She also does lots of interactive stuff with her chat. Audrey, how are you? All right, let's cut into one of these with a fork. Wondering if we could do a fair food stream? We could definitely do that in the future. All right, guys. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Hi Blizz, how you doing? Thank you for the shout out to Audrey. Audrey, how are you? How's streams been? How's Oscar? How are the pups? Hi Dro. Feed Funky, you got it. We always feed Funky. We always feed Funky. They fry really quickly for a labor of love that takes a while. Homemade mac and cheese, you gotta make it a couple hours before, let it chill, scoop it into balls, freeze for like 30 minutes. Make your breading, make your flour, make your dredge, dip it all, fry them. It's a lot of work, but they're worth it. Look at that. Yum! Oh my god. Holy cow. Yes, the champ is here. Right, Kuma? Don't they look good? You're doing great today? I'm glad to hear it, Blizz. What'd you have for dinner? Opened Google Flights. I love it. Had some cake yesterday at work. It was weird but good. Forgot what it was called. Something leche. Tres leche. Tres leche. 3 milks. Thank you, Raspy. I appreciate you. We have a whole bunch more to make too. Hi Tori, how are ya? OCD was going crazy watching that mac and cheese start to fall. Oscar's excited for the weekend. Pups are crazy as always. Let's go. Good to have you here, Tori. Did you work today? How did it go? Y'all, these are legendary. Let's see if we can't get a good video cutting into one of these. So good. So when this racing stand was giving me so many issues, I was about to toss it in the street and give up racing forever. No! Oh, you found a recipe for chocolate tres leches. That'd be interesting. Finished early, got to clock out a little early. Nice, nice. Audrey, do you guys have any fun plans for the weekend? I know you're doing your collab with Kalino. Caused me to break my brake and I was getting so fed up. Oh man, is the brake like fixable? I want to make crab rangoon. Damn it. You can get the wrappers at the store. That's our fun plan. Oscar loves the collabs. It's basically like a night out at the bar. I feel you. Funky and I have been loving date night at home. I mean, gee, imagine that. Not like it's in my name or anything. No, we've been loving date nights at home. We bought ourselves a Switch when I got my raise at work. And this past Friday, we realized that there was an extension or expansion pack for Mario Kart. So we bought that for like $25 and we were like, that could have been like dinner somewhere or a couple of drinks at a bar before tip, but why not just get the Mario Kart and have drinks at home? Going to when I get everything, I have the wrappers, crab, cream cheese. Ugh, I have stuff all over me. A good sweet and sour sauce. Oh, that'd be good with it, yeah. Leave some for Oscar and Funky. I will leave some for Funky, don't you worry. Oscar's not here, but I would share with him if he was. Instructions were horrendous. It looked like you take off the brake. Then I thought you didn't, but it was odd-shaped screw. Barely got it out, couldn't get tight again. Turns out I did need to take it out, so I struggled for like 30 minutes to take the brake off, try to get it back on, and then get it off again. Oh my gosh, wow. That's a lot. Especially when you're like on a time crunch to get your race started. That's a lot. No, you just can't beat this. That crispy breading. You just can't beat it. Ah! I was hoping it would come tomorrow because I knew if I got it today I was going to want to put it together. Oh, I bet. I bet. Okay. Let's, while the fryer's warm, make the rest of these. So I'm gonna get my dredging station back in order. And get my eggs back out. Excuse the mess on my counter. These go into flour. And then egg. Yep, dredge time. Dro, if you're still here, how are you doing today? You been getting out and surfing? I like to do the first piece of the dredge, the flour, with one hand. Transfer into here, and then switch hands. Oh my gosh, you know what I could be wearing? So I don't have to keep washing my hands as I'm about to wash my hands. I bought cooking gloves finally. You guys would be so proud. If you guys have been here for a while, I'm constantly forgetting to buy cooking gloves. Let's try these on for size. Yep, dredged hands. Exactly. Yep, more. We made 30 and we still had mac and cheese left over. I made the whole box. Can you freeze these? I think so. I don't see why not. I would say maybe cook them first and then freeze them, and you could reheat by popping in the fryer or popping in the oven. Basically as if you were preparing them to freeze, so they would be you're pulling them out of your freezer as if they're store-bought frozen, you know what I mean? That could work. I don't know, does somebody want to look that up if you can freeze fried mac and cheese? I bet you can. I don't see why not. I'm gonna have to, because we're gonna have so many of them. I just don't have a lot of room in my freezer right now. That's my problem. We have so much food. I've got like that whole bag of chocolate waffles from the other night. I've got pancakes from a couple months ago when we did a breakfast stream. I was thinking, I was 99.9% sure too. I mean, worst case scenario, we try it for science. We're not gonna be able to eat them all. It's just 2 of us, so. Borrow space in the Flips freezer, right? I would say most cooked things can be frozen. I froze some of the egg rolls that time that we did the collab with Rusty. Because we ate some and then the next day we made something else, so I froze them so they wouldn't go bad. Now, once these are already deep fried, they would be a good thing to make in the air fryer when they're frozen to reheat. Give them to me, I'll eat them. There you go. Swan! Cat can help you eat them. If it was chicken, he'd be interested in it, but probably not mac and cheese. How are you, Swan? How you feeling? I know you weren't feeling good the other day. Yep, best in an air fryer for reheating. There you go. Perfect. Sounds like trash guys in the hallway. Much better? Good. I'm so glad. Spawn, have you ever made homemade fried mac and cheese? You haven't? I haven't ever made it homemade either. Started to be trying it. Not that I can remember, I don't think. I've done a lot of fried things. Mac and cheese was never one of them, though. I've eaten it, I've just never made it myself. Not a huge fan of mac and cheese. It was my go-to meal in the hospital. I got sick of it. I mean, yes, hospital food, just the thought of it now. Oh yeah, absolutely. I get that. Especially when you've had something a bunch too. You just go through phases in your life where you're just like, yeah, I just don't want it anymore. You know what I mean? Missed the spot. It's fine. Not a big deal. Not a big deal. Yeah, we're making fried mac and cheese, Evil Marksman. We hit a sub goal last week to do fried mac and cheese, so we're making it happen. How are you doing? We made the mac and cheese homemade last night. Made some homemade breadcrumbs. A little seasoning mixture here. Formed them tonight. Popped them into the freezer for a little bit. And now here we are. Three more. Restaurant here sells fried pimento cheese balls. Ooh. Let's go. 3:30 a.m. I should have been in bed 3.5 hours ago. Fell down the rabbit hole playing video games. Oh dang, what were you playing? Been there. Been there. Project Zomboid. Oh, let's go. Nice. Driving around shooting Z's with my LMG from my car. There you go. Sounds like fun. Why do I feel like you have an endless supply? I felt like there were only 5 balls on that tray. We made 30 total, so I've already fried 15, and this is another 15. You just can't see them because the camera's in the way. See? Excited to see my parents? Yes. I haven't seen my dad. Well, no, I actually haven't seen my mom or my dad in the same amount of time. I haven't seen them since April when my sister graduated. Doable to make these with, say, ground turkey or chicken. You'd have to freeze it for a while first, just because the meat would be pretty moist. But potentially. Did that with Cult of the Lamb the other day. Said I was only going to play for a few hours. Next thing I knew, 10 hours had passed. Oh, no. Yeah, I haven't seen my parents in person since the end of April when my sister graduated from her master's program. You've never deep fried anything? Really? No way. We love deep fried stuff. It is a long time, I know. I was supposed to see them in the beginning of June for my cousin's wedding, and Funky and I decided that a 24-hour turnaround in New York with flights in a hotel room and Ubers to and from the airport and everything was just a lot, plus having to buy an outfit for the wedding and for the rehearsal dinner. It was a lot to spend to only be in New York for 24 hours, and Funky wasn't working at the time, and so we just decided it wasn't worth it. And it wasn't, well, not even that it wasn't worth it, it wasn't doable. So we decided not to go. My mom was here in March for like 5 days. And I saw my dad in the end of April. And then before that, the last time I saw them was in between Christmas and New Year's. So, been a long time. Pop these into the fryer for a couple minutes. Only ever shallow fried schnitzel. Okay, gotcha. I wouldn't necessarily recommend this method with meat. I don't know that that would work super well. Always got a space on my pull-out couch. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. Going to my mom's on Saturday. It's her birthday. Oh, nice. Very cool. What are you guys gonna do? Yes, it will be nice. All right. You appear to not be a murderer, so that seems safe to say. I am indeed not a murderer. Chicken schnitzel with German curried ketchup. Curried ketchup. Do you have a recipe for that somewhere? I am intrigued. To spend time together, honestly. Only our second time seeing her this summer. We love people who aren't murderers, yes. Except for Only Murderers in the Building is a fantastic show. I love fake characters related to that subject, like true crime things. But other than that, because like it's Steve Martin. How can you feel like he's a murderer? You know? Dogs can grow beards all over. They can. Solid logic. You can buy German curried ketchup. I'll have to look for you. Oh, okay. There's no penguins in Alaska. There's not a whole lot of inhabitants of anything in Alaska. If you were seeing kid, you would know what I'm talking about. Trying to get Dro's reference here. Have a good true crime podcast for you? Send my way. I've been listening over the last 2 years periodically when I get bored in the car to Sun Crime State. There's a lot of true crime stuff in Central Florida, apparently. One of it was in like the 70s and 80s, but apparently Daytona Beach is a terrifying place to live, and there's a lot of murderers there. So, yeah. fried mac and cheese. What up, 514? How are ya? Shayna says, back. Stepdaughter off to NAU for second year of college. Came by, so I said bye. Aw, dang. Dang. Well, I hope that it's not too sad saying bye. I hope she has a great year, though. How far away is that from you guys? So freaking good. Yes. Heinz has curry ketchup too. They do? Really? I've never seen that. First one's Devil Wears Prada. Second is Chiodos. I know the bands. Like, I've heard of them. I don't ever listen to them super, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Consistently. So, now I'm hungry again. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, you want me to cut one open? You got it. You got it. We cut one open in the first batch that we fried. This is actually the second batch. Devil Wears Prada is so good. I didn't listen to them as much. I didn't dislike them, but... yeah. Nice crispy breading too. 12 hours away. She comes home on breaks. Oh, nice. Cheese is my choice of drug. Same. Same. If Heinz does sell curry ketchup, why does my grocery I work at not sell it? I'm not sure. Maybe only some places have it. Oh, you posted a recipe. Sweet. I appreciate you, even Marksman. I'll have to look into that. Maybe we could try that one night. Appreciate you for that. Get this deep fryer unplugged. Put the lid on it. Whew. 100% believe you could open a takeaway mac and cheese. Thank you. I appreciate you. Can we watch Devil Wears Prada? I've actually never even seen that movie. Smoky barbecue ketchup. Oh yeah, that would be so good. Like barbecue rub mixed with ketchup. We could use our homemade barbecue rub that we made the other night and dip them in some ketchup with it. Despite the events of today, I survived. Oh no, what happened? Do you feel comfortable saying? Welcome in, Tex AG. How you doing? Good to have you here. Tex AG is another awesome food and drink streamer, guys, if you haven't dropped a follow. Boom. Fried mac and cheese balls. So. Jeez. Thank you, Aspie. Think about mac and cheese in takeaway boxes sold Subway style. What do you mean by Subway style, though? Gotta get plenty of rest for my 5-hour workday tomorrow. All right, no worries, 514. Thanks for hanging out. I appreciate you. Guys, make sure you drop a follow to 514. Awesome streamer. Wait. Mac and cheese, but like... bar style, like Chipotle. Oh yeah, that'd be cool. Absolutely. Like they just have mac and cheese ready and you can put like barbecue chicken, pulled pork, steak. You could do like all kind, like you put bacon. You can buy the curry ketchup from Amazon. That's true, I could look there. We could also probably just make one. Vat of mac and cheese, maybe different types of cheeses. Next level mac. Oh hell yeah, that'd be pretty cool. Like a mac and cheese bar. Yeah, I like it. You could do like chives, you could do green onions, you could do caramelized onions. All different things. Oh yeah, like cafeteria style, that would be really cool to have a mac and cheese like Chipotle. They have pizza like that, it's called Uncle Mattio's. What would we call it? Mac Attack. We would call it Mac Attack. I don't know. That was the first thing I thought of. Ooh, Gruyere and cheddar, that'd be a good combo. You thought that too? There you go, we're on the same page. It's perfect. That's perfect. Caramelized onions with sugar last night. Oh, that'd be yummy. Somewhat comical, but not at the same time. Around 10:45 this morning, a student broke a water cutoff valve to a sink in the men's restroom 2 doors from me. Caused water to gush anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes before they shut it off and capped. On my way home tonight in a storm, my driver's side windshield wiper flew off. Oh my gosh! Tex AG, you've had a very eventful day. We need to put you in a bubble. Also, is everything like okay at the school? Like, is there like major damage? Did the student do it on purpose? I have lots of questions. Just stay away from sharp objects, right? Like, what? Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. That's a lot to handle all in one day. Goodness gracious. Mac o'clock. I see where you're going with it. I feel like we can do better than that. It doesn't really flow off the tongue the same way. You know what I mean? I feel like it's one too many syllables. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if the student did it on purpose. There are parts of the wall on the ground, so I can't help but think it was intentional. Dang. That's not good. Well, I hope that student gets some help. Goodness gracious. That's pretty crazy. That is pretty crazy. It definitely sounds like they did it on purpose. The fried mac and cheese, success. A labor of love, but very, very, very worth it. Very worth it. Thank you all for crushing that goal last week to make this possible. It's pretty epic. Alright, let's make a salad real quick. Mac Ball Z. Wait, Swan, I love that. That's amazing. Mac Ball Z. Like Dragon Ball. That's pretty funny. You could have all Dragon Ball Z characters inside and have Dragon Ball Z everything. I like the idea of drunk students at 3 a.m. buying mac and cheese. Listen, if mac and cheese is not drunk food, then what is? You could call it Mac Pretty. Sure, Mac is an acronym for macaroni and cheese anyways. You could. Yeah. These are good ideas. I feel like we just need to open a Twitch restaurant, right? Pizza is, I mean, true. I also really like nachos and quesadillas late at night when I'm had a lot to drink. Okay. Alternative is pizza, I suppose. But like, loaded mac and cheese though. Alright, set these off to the side. Gonna have to freeze those. My freezer is so full. I don't know how much y'all can see from there, but it is very full. I need to use some of this food. But it's okay because when my parents are here, I'm not gonna be eating at home too much. So maybe I can pull some of the stuff out of the freezer and Funky can eat some of that. Chips, cheese, curry sauce, a big drunk food here in Scotland. Interesting. Chips like, well, you probably mean like what we call French fries, right? Sharp objects comment as I'm cutting my steak with a knife. Oh my gosh. Be careful, Tex AG. Will you do like a multiple ways to make nacho stream? Like multiple like toppings? Or like multiple ways to prepare said nachos? Which one did you have in mind? Like fries? Okay, I figured so. Yeah, I figured you meant fries. Curry sauce. Interesting. Nacho bar would kill. Yeah. We did do, I'll have to show you guys. We actually did do the one night. Have you ever seen on like TikTok where people do like the countertop nachos where they roll the aluminum foil out and do nachos on like across the whole counter. We did do a stream of that. Here they are. We did that about a year ago, actually. We did like ground beef, tomatoes, onions, jalapenos. We did pickled jalapenos on it. We did some lettuce. We made homemade queso. So good. There's never enough queso. There is never enough queso, I agree. Scottish bastardized version of poutine. Okay, fair enough. Pulled pork nachos and chicken fajita nachos. Absolutely, those are some great ones. Those are some great ones. We could do a nacho stream in the future. We would definitely want to make like all the stuff that goes on the nachos from scratch and potentially even the chips too, because nachos are not going to be a very long stream. I want to have time to like hang out with you guys for a little bit of a longer one. Then, because I mean, like nachos take like 20 minutes, you know. Ooh, ice cream nachos. You mean with like cookies or like cinnamon sugar chips or something? Mike, I'm sorry. Maybe go lay down or something. Use your heating pad if you have one, or maybe Advil or something like that. Yeah, that's another good solution. Another good solution. All right, let's cut some stuff for a salad. Don't believe in heating pads or aspirin. Well, I believe in them, but I don't buy them. I was like, what do you mean you don't believe in them? Epsom salt bath. Ooh, there you go. It's a good solution. Mike doesn't believe in anything, right? He is getting kind of cynical. Oh, feels a little wilty. Death and taxes, go away. Adam! Hi, Adam! How are ya? Good to see ya. Hope you're doing well. Hello from the girlfriend's arms. Hi, Adam's girlfriend. How you doing, Allie? Hi, Pete! Oh my god, it's Cuban Pete. He's king of the rumba beat. Love you, love you! Hope you're doing well. Hope you guys are having a good time. What are you guys up to tonight? Just chilling? Only thing guaranteed is taxes and death. That doesn't mean those are the only things you believe in. Come on, Mike. I mean, you gotta at least believe in tomatoes. Hi, we're making just a simple side salad. We made some fried mac and cheese tonight. So good. cheesy balls. What up? How you doing, hipster cook? Finish day 10 out of 12 straight of work. Home stretch. You got this. You got this. How's work going? How was it today? Chopping some onion, we'll do some tomato. Mac Attack, very ripped McDonald's, golden arches, and elbow macaroni. Yes. Let's find an old McDonald's that like didn't do well in a weird place and like just take it over and make it a mac and cheese bar. Solid plan, right? Solid plan. Sigh. Annoying in the morning. Security, as per usual, wasn't posted on the door like they were supposed to be, so I had to do 3 jobs at once. My own, train someone new, and let people in. That's the worst. Old McDonald had a farm, so you want to have your business on a farm? No, we want to take an old McDonald's. Only if we get a McDonald's pizza oven. Listen, McDonald's doesn't have pizza here. We were talking about getting a restaurant and turning it into like a mac and cheese bar. Old McDonald's. Old, yeah, an old like McDonald's restaurant though. I mean, I guess we could get an old McDonald's farm. There's one left in Ohio that has it. Really? Where in Ohio? Hi, Blob. How are ya? This knife needs to be sharpened. All the service staff are robots. You get a free side if you yell, Joey doesn't share food. I feel like you're messing with me. This can't be real. Can anybody else verify that this is real? This can't be real. No. Wouldn't everybody just get a free meal then? Oh, for the mac and cheese bar. I was like, wait a minute. There's no way McDonald's is allowing that to work. I was like, what are you talking about? No way. But yes, that'd be perfect for the mac and cheese bar. I like it. Whole thing could be we grow our own wheat for mac and cheese from our cow's milk. Yeah. Heck yeah. It could work. When you put it like that, it makes sense. It makes sense. Better question though. How are you? I'm doing okay. I'm excited for the weekend. Tomorrow I have a pretty packed day. I have to teach one of my mental health classes from 8:30 to 1. So I have to be there a little early, which means I also get to leave a little early. So I'll be leaving at 4:30 tomorrow. Tomorrow is Funky's birthday stream. Super excited for that. Yeah, doing okay. Excited for the weekend. It's almost vacation. Just trying to hang in there till then. That kind of thing, you know. See, even though Mike's idea is expensive, Evil Marksman, if you're doing something like that, you can charge top dollar. You know what I mean? Because it's like all organic. It's all like we could be, you know. Absolutely, that could work. Chef Nagin! Blah, 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 blah. Hi, Nagin! Thank you for the raid! Welcome in, guys. How we doing? If you guys are not following my girl, Chef Nagin, you're doing life wrong. Nagin streams. Hi, Kat. So much is happening. Thank you so much for the raid. Let's go. 2 freaking years. Let's go. So much hype. Shout out to Chef Nagin. Welcome in, Raiders. So good to have you here. My name's Kyle. I hope you're having a great night. Tell me what you had for dinner. Kat, thank you so much for 5 months in a row of being a subscriber. Nagin, thank you for 2 years of being a subscriber. Mwah. I love your face. Happy birthday to us. Let's go. How was your stream? How did the dog food turn out? What else did you make? Did you do stuff other than dog food? I feel like I didn't know if you weren't making human food too. Thank you guys so much for coming in. I hope you guys are having a fabulous night. Nagin's incredible. She's been a professional chef for over 12 years. She's cooked all around the world. Mom and pop kitchens, professional restaurants with like 9 courses. She's incredible. I love her. I'm blessed to know her on and off Twitch. If you're not following Nagin, go fix your life. And welcome in. We made fried mac and cheese tonight. We're making a salad. All kinds of stuff. It's been fun. I hope you guys are doing well. How is everybody? How is everybody? Made Jeffrey a human sando and a lot of foods for Sunday, baby. Let's go. Sunday. Yes, we love Sunday. She's so cute. That picture Jeff posted on Twitter of her the other day with her tongue out was just too much. Hi, Uni. Hi, Slick DG. Let's go. Hi, Jeffrey. Blah, blah. Welcome back in. Trauma, welcome back. I had Jeff for dinner in my dreams. Wait, what? You did what? So if you guys are new, my name is Kyle. A date night in is all about dinners, drinks, desserts, and date nights at home. I stream food and drink from Orlando, Florida. I work full-time in mental health services. I stream 4 days a week most weeks. I'm glad to have you here. Let me show you these freaking fried mac and cheese balls because we made a whole bowl of them, and they're insane. They are insane in the membrane. We were talking about maybe making a dipping sauce to go with them. But they are freaking incredible. So last night I made homemade white cheddar mac and cheese with elbow noodles. And I let this mac and cheese sit in a casserole dish in the fridge to cool and to chill. Then, tonight, we shaped them into balls. There's been lots of ball jokes. And then we put them in the freezer on a sheet pan for a little while to kind of harden up a little bit so that they would be easier to work with. We then dipped them into a flour dredge. And then we dipped them into an egg wash, so some eggs mixed with a splash of water. And then we put from there, they went into a mixture of cornmeal, homemade breadcrumbs, salt, pepper, garlic powder, onion powder, paprika, cayenne, and a little splash of chili powder. And then we fried them. They're cooling down now, but let me show you. It's going to naturally break there. Come on. I mean, forget about it. Look at that. Look at that. Oh my gosh. Nice crust. Thank you. You can see the cornmeal. Yeah. Ooh, a maple ketchup. That could potentially be good. Orlando, assumed you were Northeast Coast. I'm originally from there. It might be my accent that you're hearing. I'm from Pittsburgh originally, Trauma. I grew up in Pittsburgh, lived there until I was 18. I lived in Atlanta for a while, which is where I met Funky, and then we moved here 5 years ago. So I'm originally from the Northeast Coast, which might be what you're hearing in my voice. And I wear a lot of, whatchamacallit, a lot of like Pittsburgh and stuff like that. So, let me put the music back on. There was a lot of chaos. There was a lot of chaos, and I turned the music off because it was distracting me. Music, why you no play? Why you no play? There we go. Hi, Captain Happy Pants. I'm new here. Someone shut down a thing and brought me to this stream. Well, welcome in. My name's Kyle. It's nice to meet you. How you doing? No one on Twitch lives in the Northeast. Lies. I'm drooling. Oh, I appreciate you. Cheesier than my pickup lines. Oh my gosh, Hipster Cook, I cannot. Hipster Cook, I don't know if you saw in the Discord the other night, I went out to Funky's work for the first time, and I got there, and I sat down at the bar because he was busy, and I was fully prepared for him to introduce me to all of his coworkers, except he walked up and introduced himself to me as if he didn't know me and started flirting with me, and it was his pickup lines were the freaking cheesiest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. The stream froze for me when I came back. It was eerily silent. Oh no! Oh yeah, straight up Nagin. He came up, I was reading a book called The Perfect Marriage. He goes, hey, what are you reading? And I was like, a book called The Perfect Marriage. And he goes, oh, are you married? And I was like, no. He goes, do you want to be? And I was like, really? You're just gonna jump right to that? I freaking can't. CBT needed to fix chronic procrastination, asking for a friend. Evil Marksman, you could use CBT for that, but there's other methods too. If you want to send me a message and we could talk privately a little bit more about some of the options that there are, I'd be happy to help you find something for sure. Nagin, you cooked a human sandwich? Who's in it? I think Nagin cooked Jeff. Oh no. Haven't seen anything that beautiful since I last saw Jeff. I appreciate you, Trauma. I appreciate you. I'd gladly liken my mac and cheese balls to Jeff. That works. Thank Nagin. I love you. I love you. Okay, bye. Oh, okay. Bye. Are you leaving? Bye. Have fun. Hang out with Jeffrey. Kiss Sunday. Love the things. Is Kyle with a K or Kyle with a C? It's with a K. K-Y-L-E. Funky rules. Straight up. Oh my gosh. And he kept it up for like 45 minutes. Like, everybody, and of course then he like came back over to me at one point and he was like, they're all judging me. And like I was sitting by myself, none of them were anywhere near us. And he's like, they're all judging me hardcore for hitting on you. They're like, don't you have a girl? And I'm like, as they should. Sounds smooth to me. Are you sure? Did the lines work? I mean, I went home with him, so what do you think? I had already lived with him for 5 years, so, you know. Yeah, dedication for sure. Have to get through school first and get really good jobs. DBT is also great. Absolutely, that's another thing. There's lots of methods. There's also solution focused. There's all different kinds of counseling methods. His pickup lines worked. He did bring you home. They did. It was so funny. 4 a.m. Gonna go get some sleep. Food looks fantastic. Have a good one. Evil Marksman, thank you for hanging. I hope you get some good rest. Cool with a C. Nice to meet you, Kyle with a K. Nice to meet you too. What part of the world are you from? Love DBT. Been in it since November. Can see so much growth. Let's go. Shayna redeemed a hydrate. Thank you, Shayna. Appreciate you. Marriage more like Mayor Rage. Oh, who was kidding? You mean Nagin was kidding about making a human sandwich? Well. Oh, well. But yeah, it was pretty funny. It was pretty funny for sure. What did you guys who came in from Nagin's stream have for dinner tonight? West Coast, Vancouver Island. Let's go. We got more Canadians here. Hipster Cook and Aspie are Canadian. How much does a polar bear weigh? A ton? I don't know. I feel like there's a joke coming. I feel like there's a joke, there's a pun that I'm waiting on here. For sure. 238 pounds, give or take 1 human. Wait, what? Give or take 1 human. That's a human is not a unit of measure. A human can weigh lots of different things. Oh my gosh, if you guys are Big Bang Theory fans, has anybody ever seen the episode of The Big Bang Theory where Sheldon is trying to get his driver's license because his friends they're sick of driving him around everywhere and he's never gotten a license? And he goes to take the driver's license test and he's like, I have a question about this. And the lady's like, what? And he's like, how am I supposed to answer how many car lengths you're supposed to keep between you and the car in front of you? Because a car length is not a standard unit of measure. Cars are all different lengths. And she goes, look at the sign. What does it say above me? And he's like, registration or something like that. And she goes, right. And does it say I give a damn? Oh. So like, cars are not standard unit of measure. Polar bears and humans are not standard measures of weight. Humans metric, maybe. Gonna split a can of Progresso soup, both having tummy issues. Oh, Shayna, I hope you feel better. I know the post-COVID stuff can be really hard to get back to your normal. I was actually just talking with my coworker today. She just came back from having COVID, and she works in another office, but I sent her a question about this report that she sent me, and I was like, hey, my data and your data don't line up. Let's figure out where the discrepancy is. And she calls me, and we start talking through it, and she goes, oh yeah, those two numbers don't add up to the number I gave you. I'm gonna blame COVID brain. Sorry about that. And I was like, dude, honestly, it takes forever to get over COVID brain in the fog. Like, I think it took me like 3 months. And she's like, oh, great. That's encouraging. I was like, I didn't mean for it to be. I meant for it to be like there's a light at the end of the tunnel. You know? Hello, welcome in. 504. How you doing today? The Big Bang Theory is so freaking funny. Enough to break the ice. I'm hipster. Why don't we see how our ice flows together? Dang, that is a cheesy pickup line. Goodness gracious. Does that one work for you when you use it? I was sitting here waiting for I was waiting for the joke about the polar bear and its weight. That's funny. That's a funny one. I've actually never heard that one before. Two people in New Jersey. One think that car length means a double-decker bus. The others think a car length is a strand of hair. Same in Orlando. Same in Orlando. Work has been a struggle. I have a one-on-one tomorrow. I hope it goes well. I hope it goes well. First one in a year on the job. Oh, dang. Is it like with the boss? Bazinga. I didn't know this was a dating site. It's not a dating site. I am very happily taken. We were talking about how my other half was pretending he didn't know me the other night at his work. And Hipster Cook was sharing a pickup line that works for him. It works? Yes, because it's unbearable. Go away! Not unbearable. God damn it. Hi, Geek Boy! How you doing? Good to have you here. Polar Bear Icebreaker is a classic. Am I old? I don't think I've ever actually heard that one. Drinking that dihydrogen monoxide with H2O. It always seems funny when you say it that way. You have to think about what it is, you know what I mean? Boss has 3 scheduled, so it's not just me. Well, that's good. It's good that it's not just you. Right? Makes you feel a little less intimidating. Throw mac and cheese balls at my face. I'm just kidding. Here you go, Nikki. Gotten horrified looks from people when I said that. Oh my gosh. Yeah, they're like, wait, what? It's monoxide, because you have carbon monoxide, which is bad, right? That's the thing that throws people off. 504, make some chicken then. What would I pair this with? We were just trying to talk about a sauce to dip it in. We talked about maybe like a barbecue ketchup. Somebody said a maple ketchup. I cut stuff for salad just to balance it out a little bit. No, it's not chicken. It's fried mac and cheese. Dude. Sebastian, how you doing today? I'm doing okay. Thank you for asking. Good to have you here. Somebody suggested curry ketchup. Yes, we've gone through a couple of ideas. Yeah, I don't know. You could do all different sorts of sauces if you wanted. It'd be good with like a buffalo ranch. I've seen people serve it with like a, what's that called? Not a vodka sauce, like a rosé pasta sauce, like a cheesy marinara. I've seen people serve it with that before. I don't know. Hey, let's go. Trauma paying forward the gift sub from Chiphead over to Triad. Thank you so much for paying forward that gift sub. I appreciate you. Triad, if you are here, please say thank you to Trauma for the gift sub. Let's go. Spicy maple aioli. What would go in a spicy maple aioli? What would you be using to make it spicy? I'm intrigued. Harissa ketchup. Ooh, harissa ketchup. Don't thank me, thank Jeff. Why Jeff? I mean, we love Jeff. Thank you, Jeff. But why Jeff? What did Jeff do that made you Say thank Jeff. Queso? Might be overkill with the queso. Might be overkill with the queso. There's a lot of cheese in the mac and cheese. Also, we're having pizza tomorrow, so I'm gonna veto the queso idea. But I love queso for other things, for sure. For sure. Don't get me wrong. You guys know I love queso. Aioli. Aioli's good. I am a hot mess. I have stuff all over my sweatshirt. Goodness gracious. Find it funny and will 10,000% overplay my love of Jeff. Do it. Do it. Jeff's pretty cool. We love Jeff. Chipotle ranch. We could do Chipotle ranch. Queso's only too much cheese because they're fried mac and cheese balls and we're having pizza tomorrow. That's why. I just want to, like, you know, not have that much cheese in my system all at once. So what all should we put in to make a Chipotle ranch? Say it slower. Wait, what? Queso, why is it too much cheese? I don't get it. I don't get it. Getting bogged down is bad. Indeed, it can be. It can be. Oh, queso, why? Okay. I get it now. That definitely went right over my head. That went right over my head. Oh, I'm tired. That's why it went right over my head. Goodness gracious, it's been a long week. Goodness gracious, it's been a long week. Those of you who came in from Nagin stream, what are you guys doing this weekend? What are you doing this weekend? Nagin, are you doing coffee and community? Delayed eye roll was worth it. Oh my gosh, went right over my head. Really did. Really, really did. Look on Pinterest for a recipe. Maybe. Potentially. Thank you for the follow, 504. Appreciate you. Going to the airport to pick you up on Sunday, right? Yup. Yup. Nagin, I was telling Jeff when he was here earlier, I had never seen the banana peanut butter bash sundae made at the shop before until last week. I was watching one of Jeff's streams and someone got it with the flavor of the moment with the peanut butter Oreo. And I was like, hold on, why have I never seen this before? Why are more people not ordering this? It looked incredible. Brought you in and out, it's in the freezer. Oh, thanks. Oh, thanks. Cool beans. The best one is the Brickle Pie. Brickle Pie looks pretty great. I've seen, yeah, that one, but I have not seen that before. And I was like, dude, why have I not seen this? Why are more people not ordering it? Going to Boston to see some peeps before Jeff Con. Let's go. Are we calling it Jeff Con now? I'm skipping Boston. Tell Nagin. Whoa. Planning a full day of blowing up a balloon and letting it go so it makes the cool squeaky fart noise. You and Jeff would get along. You're calling it Jeff Con? That's pretty great. That's a pretty great name. Oh, I mean, no, you're not, Mike. I was like, wait a minute, I'm confused. You're doing CNC on Saturday? Let's go. Calls for mayo. Do you have mayo? Yes, I do have mayo. Hardcore background music? Oh, yeah. Mayo, sour. I don't have any sour cream. Crap. I don't want to clean the kitchen. Nikki, that's the story of my life. I don't know what it is lately. I just do not want to clean up after stream. And I have to, like, force myself to do it. Did you just copy Aspie's message right in there? Yeah, I don't have sour cream. I also don't have fresh cilantro. I have dried cilantro. Well, pretty sure he's sleeping in an alley. I'm pretty sure he's not. I'm pretty sure he's making that up. Seemed copy pasta-able. Yeah. Pasta-able. I cannot. Oh, now Uni's in on it too? Chipotle's in adobo. I do not. Not right now. Do not right now. Oh no, now Slick's at it too. Nagin, look what you started. Oh no. Oh no. I can't stop laughing. Aspinator started it. But did she though? But did she though? But did she though? I cannot. Oh my goodness. Yes, I mean, yes. Blame Aspie. Wow. Poor Aspie. Poor Aspie. Only giving Kyle the recipe, right? Aspie's like, I'm innocent. I don't know what y'all are talking about. Yo, what the heck am I gonna do with all of these fried mac and cheese balls? Like, where are the flips? Can they come eat these? Flip! Mrs. Flip! I'm sure they're in bed. Please tell Mike to stop lying to Nagin. Oh yeah, Mike, stop lying to Nagin. Do I know how to juggle? No, I do not. I do not. That would end disastrously, I'm sure. I'm gonna have to freeze them. I don't have a lot of room in the freezer, that's the problem. That's the closest I can do to juggling. The game's blaming people. I better run before I get blamed for something. Oh no. Stacked freezer gang. Heck yeah. I don't have a lot of room in the freezer and I just make it work. Listen, TexAG, you look really guilty now, right? So hot here, my AC can't keep up. Well, how hot is there, Shayna? It's been pretty hot here. Give some to Funky. I mean, still, there's 30 balls in there. Well, no, there's 29 because I ate one. There's 29 balls in there. That's a lot of balls. Redeems juggle. No. Ding. Have I tried throwing them at something? Like what? Why are you ousting me like that? Mike and Nagin. Play nice. Mike likes balls of mac and tomato. He also likes when you throw balls of mac and tomato into his mouth down a slide. Oh my gosh. Funky just heard those blurps for the first time the other night and he was having a field day. He was dying. Tell Mike I said, aha, got him. Tell Nagin to believe I'm not going to Boston even though I am. Wait, what? Wait, guys. Somebody has to, since I'm not able to go, someone has to install the plaque dedicating the slide at Jeff's Ice Cream Shop to Rusty Go Mike. And then stream the ceremony. Okay, thanks. Just rearrange your whole life and do that. Cool. You already ordered it? Good. Exclamation point poof. That doesn't work here. Oh my gosh. Aspie, thank you for the blur. Abracadabra. Oh, well. Yeah, there's nothing that actually makes them poof. It just says point and laugh. It doesn't work. This is why I love you. Oh, you guys are chaos. Do I need to separate you two? NMD's a teacher, like somebody's going to timeout. Someone's going to the corner, for sure. I cannot. I cannot. Y'all are so silly. Kitchen's still dirty. Nagin, clean your kitchen! Shelf Neglin's here. Yep. We love Shelf Neglin. Remakes the seating jar. Oh no. Sorry everyone, you can blame it on Kyle as to why I'm not going to Boston. Be sure to send her long messages on why you're disappointed in her for being the cause that I'm not going to Boston. I'm not even going to Boston. It's not my fault. Nagin has no power here. Ha ha ha. Wait, whoa. That's not true. Shayna, help. Nagin, do you feel delirious from like going from West Coast to East Coast time? Is it weird to have that transition? I've never done that. I've never been to the West Coast. Not since I was like literally a year old, so I don't know. I feel like it's gotta be a weird transition. Like, are you all out of sorts about the time? Can you do a quick trivia so I can be entertained while cleaning? I only have the questions that are from last week available. Please ban me, Nagin. Wait, well, why do you want me banned? Neglin's acting like she went to Australia. It's not even that bad. No, I said that. She didn't say that. I just asked the question. Imagine a baby getting jet lagged, right? All they do is sleep, right?